comfort food. A dish that you usually eat because it makes you feel better, reminds you of something you're nostalgic about. Maybe even, gives you some kind of satisfaction. And, these tend to be there to balance out being like upset about something, stressed out about something, or even just feeling homesick. But I don't think that that needs to be limited to food. And what I'm going to tell you today is what I think is the perfect game for that. Because this is a kind of like review analysis type of thing, there's obviously gonna be spoilers. So this is your warning. If you haven't played this 30-year-old game though, that's been on every Nintendo console since it released, and even some of their handhelds like the 3DS.
What's wrong with you?
Also, worth noting, all of the footage you're going to see of the game today is on a fan-made PC port called Ship of Harkinian, link in the description. It has a lot of quality of life changes, such as extra equip slots, widescreen support, faster text, dear god the game is so slow on the original release, and just a lot of other customizable settings. You can raise the frame rate if you don't like the game's original. The game originally ran at 20 FPS. If you don't like the small size of the 3DS remake, definitely consider checking out the PC port. I'm going to try to be a little bit organized and break this into 3 sections. Story, gameplay, which also includes its replayability, and a 3rd section that I'm going to call Whimsy. Story and gameplay are pretty self-explanatory. Whimsy is basically like how good the game is at drawing players in, which kind of like ties into the other things, but it's definitely like something that I want to bring attention to. Now that that's out of the way, I'm going to start with the story. To summarize it, the story of Ocarina of Time is pretty simple. Link wakes up to try and fail to help the Deku Tree, goes to meet the princess. They try to stop Ganondorf from getting to the Sacred Realm and give him access in the process. Then Link must travel to the 5 dungeons, rescue the sages, and have the final showdown with Ganon. For the purpose of this video though, we're going to focus on this surface level telling of the story. While it does give you a lot to think about if you really dig into it, the top layer of the story has very Saturday morning cartoon vibes to it. Gives the hero different people to meet, different activities to do, enemies to defeat, and most importantly, a kingdom to save. Going back to that definition we laid out at the top of the video, the game's story does already cover the feelings of nostalgia and the emotional satisfaction. It obviously places the hero in this hero position, but then it doubles down on that if it's a repeat playthrough, and then triples down on that if their first playthrough was when they were younger. But because it also has those Saturday morning cartoon vibes, it also will like resubmit those childhood morning feelings of watching a cartoon. If you want to dig deeper, I do have a video linked in the description that tells a very good deeper dive into the story of the game. Next up, we have gameplay. Ocarina of Time has a very simple gameplay loop, and that works to its benefit. The game is broken into 2 sections, the overworld and the dungeons. In the overworld, you progress the story, find and complete side activities, and find and collect the game's 2 main collectibles, heart pieces and gold Skulltula tokens. In dungeons, you solve puzzles, defeat enemies and bosses, and collect most of the important items. In most dungeons, the major items found within are important to solving its puzzles. In both sections, your general moveset is the same. Move with the analog stick, use items with the C buttons, roll on the ground with A, swing your swords with B, and block using your shield with R. In addition, Nintendo added a targeting system using the N64's Z button, which adds a few extra moves to Link's arsenal, walking and dodging to the sides, backflipping, and performing a high-powered but very punishable jumping attack. Your entire combat experience hinges on your mastery of these simple moves. When you are not facing an enemy, you can still perform these moves, and you can press Z to recenter the camera behind Link to get a better view of your immediate surroundings. Given that this is a game that I'm suggesting is good to be played 2 to 3 times a year, totally not speaking from experience, you can get a lot of practice with this system. The game has a very solid feeling of progression, even from the start of the game. As soon as you can leave Kokiri Forest, for example, you can immediately acquire 2 ammo upgrades for your slingshot, 4 heart pieces, a bottle, a wallet, a bunch of gold Skulltula tokens. I forgot to keep track of which ones I got before the second dungeon, and probably more that I'm not remembering. And again, that's all available fresh out the first dungeon with just your slingshot and Ocarina, which you get before meeting Zelda for the first time. Add in meeting Zelda, and you add 3 songs, the mask trading side quest, access to the next dungeon, and then even more from there. And that continues throughout almost the whole game, and you have the ability to see what's coming up before you can get it. An example of that being, just after you get the bombs from Dodongo's Cavern, you can access hidden grottos, including one that has a heart piece under the water. Much later in the game, you get a pair of iron boots, and you can finally get to this submerged item. By the time you finish the last major dungeon, you'll have gone through the main overworld areas probably dozens of times, and you'll be able to get more items on pretty much every pass. If you ask me, this system of progression leans heavily into the emotional satisfaction aspects of being a comfort game. The part that's the hardest to place is the game's whimsy. I defined it earlier as being how good the game is at drawing players in, and honestly, the game excels at this too. The previous 2 sections feed into this greatly though. For the story, it's simple and easy to understand, but then has a lot more detail into it if you actually take the time to dig into it. To touch on what that video I mentioned earlier talks about, there are 2 other storylines going on in the background that are told almost exclusively through subtext. Whether you want it to stay simple or you want something deeper to dig into, Ocarina of Time has you covered. For the gameplay, the simplicity begets its depth. Like I said before, the more you master the movement, the better you'll be at combat. But on top of that, you could use the different movement options to do some silly things. Some examples include jumping up ledges you wouldn't normally be able to, falling into water while talking to Navi, skipping the door of time to get to Adult Link early, and many, many more things. The only part of the definition that doesn't really fit as well as the others is familiarity. Until you give the game some time, usually over the course of multiple playthroughs, it won't have built up that level of familiarity that a typical comfort food would have. Depending on how much time you put into the game, that won't last. Speaking personally, I've played the regular game dozens, if not hundreds of times, watched an absurd amount of speedrunning content, and played randomizers with a big assortment of settings. So I definitely have a lot more familiarity than most, but I can't discount the impact that the game has had. The game sold 7 million copies on N64, then millions more when it was remade on 3DS, so it has a reasonably large reach. But dedicated fan base, and many people who come back again and again. It's considered one of the greatest games of all time, and that must be for a reason. Given the game's apparent ability to draw people in and keep them around, it's very likely to develop a level of familiarity in addition to the multitudes of emotional satisfaction and nostalgic feelings from its other aspects. If you want to stray from the textbook definition we've been working with, the game is simply a fun time because of how simple it is. You probably won't get stumped by puzzles, unless you're me when I was a kid. You won't get stressed out by difficulty, unless you decide to challenge yourself. You get to be a hero, saving Hyrule from Ganon and his forces of evil, and get a sense of reward for your efforts through the game's progression scale. Whether you look at it analytically, or just from vibes and good times, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, it's the perfect comfort game. And for that, I will be forever grateful to it. Thank you for listening to me ramble again. Ocarina of Time is a game near and dear to my heart, so I wanted to try to share some of that love around. And it should be obvious that kind of practicing what I preach, this is my comfort game. There was really only one time in my life where it wasn't able to help me, but by and large, it's always been able to, like, help me relax, calm me down, usually even make me happy. So, let me know down in the comments what game does that for you. Obviously, I spent all the time to make a video about it. Ocarina of Time does a good job for me. But that's about all she wrote. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I really hope that you take care of yourselves. And as always, have yourself a damn good one.